to the Grateful Dead. It's quiet out here. I never have anybody to talk to, so I'm glad to have you here. My name is J. Oliver Landsness. I was born in 1877. I died in 1958. I was 80 years old when I died, plus a couple of months. My father was Ludwig. Ludwig emigrated from Norway. He was originally from Stavanger, Norway, lived on a small farm just outside of Stavanger. He came here in 1871, went to Chicago. He was trained as a painter. That was right after the Chicago fire, and so he had plenty of business. My mother also was from Stavanger. Her name was Greta Melina Johannesdottir Rognus. I don't think she wrote many checks. Nonetheless, she came over a year later, and they became acquainted, courted, and married. We continued to live actually in Morris, Illinois. It was close to Chicago. And I continued to work. We had a son, Lawrence. Lawrence only lived a couple of months and passed away. He's buried in Illinois. We then decided to move west. And so we moved to Sioux Rapids. We got a job working for a wagon manufacturer in Sioux Rapids. I was going to be painting and do the detailing on the wagons, which I did. I had a daughter, Laura, was born. And Laura lived in Sioux Rapids for all of her life. She later married Jake Lydahl. Then I was born, 1877, in Sioux Rapids. And my father had a chance to buy a farm, 40 acres, which is actually in the southwest quarter of Section 28, Lee Township, which would be actually about 3 miles south and 2.5 miles east of Sioux Rapids. Gary Edgerton later, that farm was joined with another more land. Gary Edgerton later owned it, if that gives you an idea as to where that might be. Nevertheless, so we lived there, built a house, had some outbuildings, farmed there until about 1889. In 1890, I had a chance to buy 2 80s in the northeast quarter. So that formed the northeast quarter. And I then we decided to move the house I built up to the northeast quarter. In those days you used what you called a horsepower, which is a big wheel. A rope is then attached to what you would perceive as the axle of it, tied to whatever you were moving. You have a stake to the ground. A team of horses then move the wheel around. You got a great big mechanical advantage. Unfortunately, my father decided to step over the rope just as it was being pulled. The rope broke, threw him into the air, broke his leg terribly. He ruined a horse. Riding to Sioux Rapids to fetch a doctor to come back and treat him. He limped for the rest of his life. As time went on, we continued to farm. We had a livestock operation. I had a brother born, Levi Godfrey. Levi only lived a couple of years, passed away. Had another brother born. They named him Levi Godfrey. I don't know whether my parents were just stubborn or they'd like to have raised somebody by the name Levi. But anyway, the second Levi lived to 89 years, and so that one worked out. And then I had a brother, Arthur, born, and then the twins were born, Lily and Henry. We continued to live there and farm, and my father passed away in 1897, but we continued to operate the farm. I was 20 years old, my brother Levi was 14. We had the younger ones, my mother Greta was alive, and we continued on. We had livestock, we even had some sheep. I remember my mother always clipped the wool from the sheep herself, carded it. We had a spinning wheel that had been brought from Norway. The wool was spun into threads and wool, and then later then knitted or whatever you made clothing with it. So that's how we survived in those days. 1906, well, for education, I always went to country schools. When I first started school, I only spoke Norwegian. My teacher only spoke English. Those days, they didn't have alternative language people. You just had to do the best you could, so I learned English. And never got a high school certificate. Later on, I went to a school in Des Moines called Capital City Commercial College, 4 Cs we called it. My brother Arthur went there later on. Years later, my son Kenneth went there. But 1906, my brother Arthur had been to 4 Cs, got sick, came home, he was very ill. My mother cared for him, but Arthur died. A month later, my mother died. They determined that he had spinal meningitis. which was pretty much a death sentence. When my father died, he actually died of a bursted appendix. I'm sure his last days weren't very comfortable. Well, at that point, we needed to wind up the affairs of the estate. My mother was dead, my father was dead, and so I decided I'd buy the home place. That would be 1908. Prior to that time, I'd bought 160 acres in Section 27. To buy the home place then, I sold the 160 in Section 27 to my brother Levi. He farmed it for the rest of his life, then his son Austin, then his son Merlin farmed that farm. But at any rate, as time went on, I had my own family. Kenneth was born first, Marjorie second, Donald third. Donald actually was killed in World War II. He was a bombardier in a plane and was killed overseas. His body was buried overseas. After the war, he was disinterred, and he brought his body back here. It's up in the family plot. He was married, had a daughter, Ruth Ann. She was born July 4th, 1943. He never saw her. That happened a lot in those days. So, at any rate, as time went on, I became, in fact, very active in community affairs. I was president of the Farm Bureau, went to a lot of organizations, actually ran for the legislature. I was in the 52nd, 53rd General Assembly of the legislature. Active as far as local organizations was concerned. Went to a lot of meetings. Also, I didn't really pay attention to my gas gauge that much. I would often run out of gas. I had my granddaughter Hermity with me one time. We ran out of gas. I stopped, I just left her there, walked to a farm to get gas, brought her back. She said, "I know why you run out of gas, Grandpa, you go to too many meetings." Which is kind of true. Well, at any rate, I died in 1958. My son Kenneth then bought the farm from the estate. And I should say that right after I bought the farm, I can tell you, I married my wife, Bertha Smith. She lived in the area, and she survived me as far as that's concerned. She later moved, after Kenneth bought the farm, then she moved to Sioux Rapids. Having bought the farm, of course, I tended to be of the frugal sort. We had a big garden. We canned a lot. If a fruit jar, for example, became cracked, I thought it was too good to throw out. I saved it, and I thought it'd be a good thing to store salt in, so I labeled it salt jar. We put it in the basement. After I died, they cleaned out the basement. They probably found 35 or 40 jars labeled salt jars. None of them had any salt in it. My son thought it was kind of funny. I never thought it was funny. I had a good idea. I just didn't carry through with it. Nevertheless, as I look back on my life, I was proud of my life. I wasn't perfect, but I was proud of my life. I was proud of my family. I was proud to live in Sioux Rapids. Thank you very much.